Hi everyone, welcome to episode 110 of The Art of Business English. Andrew Ambrosius here for another episode, and I'm doing something completely different today because I have been reading a lot, researching a lot, and actually one of my students asked me this week about how you can travel around the world. And I thought, well, it's really a good question. And, considering that I have traveled around the world, I thought I would prepare an episode for you guys because we had quite a detailed discussion about it, and it was quite inspiring for this student because, they are in their mid-20s, so they have studied, they are now working, but they want, this experience of global travel, living abroad. And I really introduced them to the concept of being a digital nomad. Now, maybe you know what a digital nomad is. If not, I'm going to go and explain it a little bit. So basically, today's episode is really about how, it's not related to age, but if you are younger, it's going to be a lot easier, especially if you don't have a family with children. However, if you do that, you can still achieve this. But anyway, the episode is about how you can travel the world and live abroad and have these wonderful experiences without being tied down to one location. Okay, so let's take a look at episode 110, how you can travel and live abroad. Okay, so as I said, it started from a conversation with one of my students who's in his mid-20s, smart guy, wants to travel, and there are several options. He's actually been able to get a visa. There is a visa program for Australia and many of the Commonwealth countries. For example, it depends on where you're from, but for example, you can get a working holiday visa in Australia, you can get working holiday visas for Canada, you can get working holiday visas for England, just to name a few. Personally, I did a working holiday visa many years ago in the UK. I lived in London for several years. It was a really positive experience because I was working in Parliament there, got a lot of experience, really great international business experience. So that was a really positive and productive experience for me. So basically, the first consideration is, you need visas to work in some countries. So before you can't just arrive in countries and say, I'm going to work. So that's the first consideration. If you're European, then you can move between European nations, obviously, and you can just work without needing a visa. That's the great part about being an EU citizen. However, if you're going to travel to other countries, you need to be aware of some of the visa requirements. However, if you want to be a digital nomad, then you're less restricted because of the type of work that you're going to be doing. So a digital nomad is someone who only needs really their laptop or a computer with an internet connection. And with that, they can literally work from any place on the globe where there is an internet connection. Okay, so basically, to put this simply, it works like this. If you would like to go into a lot of detail, there is the classic book, The 4-Hour Work Week. Now, if you've read The 4-Hour Work Week, I'm sure some of this information will be quite relevant to you, or you'll remember it. If you haven't read The 4-Hour Work Week, then I really encourage, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But The 4-Hour Work Week is really an iconic book for this generation. And it talks about how you can only work 4 hours a week, which is great for many people. So yeah, the book, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss is quite iconic, and it put a lot of these concepts down on paper for people to learn from. I'll put the notes to it in below in the show notes, so you can get a link to it and grab it off Amazon or whatever. So let's go into detail. Basically, first I encourage you to save because you need to leave with some money. So this could be a challenge for some people, but you're going to have to try and really just be quite strict with your saving. You need to save at least minimum 10% of your monthly salary. And I would say if you are, depending on I mean, it's going to depend on what currency you're working from and where you are located in the world, but you're going to need at least $5,000 to start with. That's just to make sure that you go comfortably. Okay, so the idea is that you're working now. You're living in a country that provides you with enough salary to live and save. Okay, and then you're going to try and save up $5,000 or 5,000 euros or whatever. Okay, then especially if you're young, you need to find a skill that you can sell, and that skill set should be something that requires you only to use your computer. So some examples of that could be, are you good at social media? Are you good at social media marketing? Are you good at graphic design? Are you good at video editing? These are some of the skills that you can do just with your computer. Okay. Are you good at teaching a foreign language? Can you provide conversation classes in your foreign language or your native language? For example, maybe you are Spanish and you do speak English. You want to go to another country to improve your English, but at the same time, you could be giving someone who is a native English speaker online Spanish-speaking classes or Spanish-speaking conversation classes, okay? That's an example. If you're really good at social media, then you could manage people's social media accounts for them. You're not going to be charging much, but some companies, especially small, companies that have maybe between 5 and 10 employees, maybe the boss is really too busy to manage his or her social media account for that company. So then you propose to them that for $50 a week, you will manage the account for them, or for $25 a week. I mean, it's not going to be much, but if you have 3 or 4 accounts, then that's going to start to add up. Okay, another thing is graphic design. Can you do any graphic design work? Especially if you're a good graphic designer, people are always looking for great graphic designers. Are you good at video editing? Can you edit videos? A lot of people nowadays need video editing. Are you good at translating? Can you translate documents? Are you good with really good one is copy? Can you write sales copy? So can you write in your native language really effective sales copy that people can put on their websites that will help them sell their products? A good copywriter can earn a lot of money, and you can work from anywhere in the world. So these are some of the skill sets that you're going to need, because you can't have a skill set that requires you to be in an office or somewhere locally. Okay, it needs to be a skill set that you can send the finished product to someone via the internet. So what's interesting though is maybe you are okay at social media, or maybe you're okay at video editing, but you're not great. Nowadays, you've got platforms, online learning platforms, like the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones, is Udemy, and they're offering lots of great courses. Sometimes those courses cost like $200. However, Udemy is always having sales. So a $200 course can be picked up and purchased for $10 or $20. So purchase an online course to teach you how to use Adobe After Effects or Adobe Illustrator or Camtasia. These types of products, you can then get a proficient level of use at, and then you can start to do some basic or more advanced video editing or graphic design work for customers. So that's another step that you can do. You do this in the preparation phase. So you're saving, you're working, and you're also learning and honing your skills. Okay? With that, then you then need to create an account on a like freelancing website. Freelancing means nowadays there are many platforms where people can sell their services internationally on platforms. So you can just be an administrative assistant if you want. You can just help people answer emails even. You can provide all these services. So like, video editing, graphic design work, even simple things like data entry. And on these platforms, you create profiles. So I'll list some of them. You've got Freelancer, Upwork, Fiverr. Okay, so those are 3 I can just think of without even off the top of my head. And these types of platforms allow you, or they give you a great exposure to the international marketplace. And then obviously, because you're not going to have any reviews or any feedback, you need to start with very low pricing to attract people. It's going to be maybe in the beginning, or you could get one of your friends to purchase your services, or some of your family members, and they will purchase a $5 or a $10 project through the platform, and then they can give you some positive 5-star ratings, and then from there you're going to get a little bit of traffic, and you're going to generate maybe some more sales. So before you leave your home country for your destination, you need to be honing your skills, getting good at something. You need to be saving, and you also need to be starting to try and generate a small customer base. Okay? Once you've got these 3 things into place, then you will be in a position to be able to leave. Okay? So you've got your digital nomad skills. You've got your equipment, so you've got a good laptop, you've got a camera, whatever you need. You've got the money saved, and you've got some bit of work generated, a bit of credibility on these platforms, and then especially if you're living in expensive countries, like Australia is very expensive, England, Europe. I mean, these countries are very expensive. America is very expensive in terms of living. Okay, then you can, once you've got everything organized, you've saved everything, you've got your skills up, then you can travel and move to a country such as, I don't know, the typical ones, like Thailand, Vietnam. You could go out to India, Sri Lanka. You've got the Philippines. You've got Malaysia. There's a lot of countries where the cost of living is really, really low compared to what you are paying to live in your home country. So once you've moved out to one of these countries, then you're only going to be required to work maybe 2 hours a day, or maybe one day you work 4 hours and the next day you work no hours. Because the cost of living in your destination country, it will be so low that you can probably, I traveled around South America for 4 months when I was in my mid-20s, and I had a budget of $30 a day. So, and that was living quite well. We had to pay for our accommodation, our food, and any extra activities that we wanted to do. So, you can think about that. You multiply 30 by a month and it doesn't really come out to much. Okay, so the services that you sell through these platforms like Upwork or freelancer.com or Fiverr, once you've got a bit of a following, you're going to be basically charging people $5 to $10 an hour in the beginning, which doesn't sound like much. Especially if you're coming from Europe. You'll be like, I can't work for $5 or $10 an hour. That's crazy. But in the beginning, you will be doing that because you need to build up your following. And when you're living in a country where the cost of living is so low, you don't really need to work many hours. If you're charging $10 an hour for some online classes with someone doing conversation classes, you only need to work 3 hours and you've covered the cost of your living for that day. Okay? So those are some ideas that you can use to start seeing how this works. And then you've traveled with, you've got like this savings, and you've got your savings behind you. So it's not like if I don't work, I'm going to die tomorrow, because you have savings. It's just that you don't want to spend all of your savings over the next 6 months, because with about $5,000, you should be able to live and travel for between 4 and 6 months without working a day in your life. You could literally spend 6 months traveling on about $5,000 in countries where the cost of living is very low. I spent 5 months of not working a single day, and I think I spent in total £4,500 because I was coming out of the UK. So you can see really like the cost of, this is not much money if you compared the cost of living back in London, I mean, it would be impossible to live in London for this type of money for more than about 5 minutes. So, and you know, it's great to not work for 4 months, not a single day. I mean, I did lots of great stuff. I went to Machu Picchu. I went trekking through the Andes. I went all through Argentina and through Chile. And I spent time in Brazil and was in Rio, and it was amazing. It was an epic trip. I did everything. So it wasn't like I was poor and I was living just from, you know, day to day. No, we spent we spent time doing great things. It was fantastic. So the idea is that you do wonderful things with your savings, but if you want to top up your savings, if you want to work, if you want to be a digital nomad and extend out this time, then you're able to do it through supporting yourself just through extra hours of, you know, this type of work that you can do with your computer and your laptop. So those are some ideas about how you can become a digital nomad. Now, as I said, it's probably much easier if you don't have kids or a family, but that's not necessarily true. For example, some people think, oh, you know, I've bought a house, I've got a flat, I've got a mortgage, I've got a job, I've got a family. I can't, you know, it's impossible. I can't move. It's possible. You could easily save, you know, as an adult, 2 people, no, like a family could easily save up a good wedge of money and spend a year traveling around the world and not work for a single day in that whole year. You can rent out your flat or your house while you're away to help cover the mortgage. I mean, even if you are single, no family, and you have a flat, you can rent it out while you travel as well. I mean, you don't need to be stuck, you know, with that flat. You can just register your flat with an agency and they'll rent it out for you. That will help pay the mortgage, and you can just forget about that and go traveling for a year. So those are some options to become a digital nomad, and the experiences that you're going to have when you're abroad are going to be quite inspiring. You're going to meet amazing. I mean, I was abroad. I was living in Vancouver. I was on a working holiday visa, and that's where I met my wife at a barbecue, which is quite, you know, I'm Australian, so why not? So, you know, the experiences that you can have can be life-changing when you're traveling, and, you know, the way you perceive the world and the way you understand the world, really it changes. And I think that, especially if you're young, getting out, spending a year just traveling around the globe as much as you can is well worth it. And it's possible nowadays to become a digital nomad. I mean, this generation that's coming up now, it's incredible what they can do without, you know, they don't need to be employed by a company. They can be freelancers. You don't have to be restricted by visas. You know, you can go to Thailand, for example, get 3-month tourist visa. You are working, but, you know, the work that's happening is happening in the cloud, and, you know, you're earning money through these platforms, and you just register that money in your home country. So you're not earning much, so you're not going to be paying really much in the way of taxes. I mean, most countries have a minimum salary. If you don't earn over about 6,000 euros a year, you're practically not going to pay any tax. So it's really feasible for you to be living and working abroad and not necessarily being restricted by visas. So those are some tips on how you can do that. You know, you don't need to be, you know, super rich. You don't need to have everything. You just need to have a laptop, internet connection, good entrepreneurial spirit and sense of adventure, and a little bit of money behind you to make sure that you've got a little, you know, little bit there in case something happens. And then those are the options, and those are the possibilities. And what you'll find is that when you are traveling, the opportunity spectrum opens right up, and you'll meet some amazing people, and you never know, you can start something new with them. You could be meeting people that you could be starting businesses for the future. I mean, so many things can happen. So those are my tips and my little inspiring chat on how you can potentially travel around the world. You know, cheap flights are coming, you know, more and more popular, even in countries such as India. I mean, you've got lots of cheap airlines there. You've got low-cost airlines all through Asia. So once you're over that side of the world, if you're coming from Europe, it's not going to be that expensive just to move countries and hop around. Okay, you can even go old school like I did with my friends. We literally took the buses all around South America. We didn't take a single flight. We would take, I think the longest bus journey I took was like 26 hours. It was terrible. And it was a bus that was like just a seat. It wasn't even like a bed. So that was an epic journey, not much fun, but it can be done, okay? So those are my tips. I hope you found it very inspiring, and I'll see you guys all next week on the Art of Business English. Check out all the stuff below. We'll be linking up to it. And if you do have any questions, then put your comments in the comment section, please. I would really love to hear your thoughts and any questions you have. And maybe you're already a digital nomad and you've got some advice for your fellow listeners. So that's it from me. Take care. Bye for now.